Stephen Curry is one of the greatest players ever to pick up a basketball. The man who revolutionized the modern game. The greatest shooter in NBA history. His range, his skills, his confidence. It changed everything about the game of basketball. Because of Curry, teams rewrote their playbooks. Defenses collapsed under his gravity, and entire franchises reshaped their rosters just to keep up with the wave he created. And of course, the team that has benefited the most from his brilliance is none other than the Golden State Warriors. 4 championships, 2 MVPs, including the first ever unanimous selection, 10 All-Star appearances, a scoring champ, a Finals MVP, a spot on the NBA's 75th anniversary team. Curry isn't just a generational talent, he's an all-time great. But what if I told you this dynasty almost never happened? Because once upon a time, Steph Curry wasn't a sure thing. He wasn't a can't-miss prospect. He was just a scrawny kid out of Davidson with average ball handling, questionable shot selection, and an uncertain future. Despite an electric college career, plenty of NBA teams remained unconvinced, and in the 2009 NBA draft, 6 teams passed on Curry. But one of those 6 teams in particular deserves a special place in the NBA's Hall of Regret. A team with not 1, but 2 chances to change history. The Minnesota Timberwolves, who passed on drafting Curry twice. In the summer of 2009, the Timberwolves were a franchise seeking direction. Years of front office missteps, coaching changes, and draft blunders had left them stuck in mediocrity at best. Then came June 25, 2009, a day that could have changed everything not just for Minnesota, but for the entire NBA. On draft night, the Wolves had a golden opportunity, 2 top 6 picks, and 2 chances to reshape their future. With the recent departure of Kevin Garnett, Minnesota desperately needed a star to be the next face of their franchise, and positionally they needed a point guard. With the 5th pick, they made their move. Ricky Rubio, the flashy Spanish prodigy with magical handles and court vision, and who had been playing professionally since he was 14 years old. A bold choice. A risky choice, but at the time, the Rubio hype was real. And without the hindsight we have now, a pick with that kind of upside made sense. Besides, Minnesota wasn't done. They still had the 6th pick and one more chance to add a second dynasty-building block. With Steph Curry still on the board, Minnesota had their shot to build the backcourt of the future. Instead, this happened.
With the 6th pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Johnny Flynn from Syracuse University.
We didn't know it then, but with those 15 words and one decision, the fate of the Timberwolves franchise and the NBA changed forever.
With the 7th pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors select Stephen Curry from Davidson College.
But what if it never happened? What if, in that moment, the Timberwolves got it right? What if Curry never played a single game for the Warriors? Imagine a world where the Golden State Warriors never became the NBA's most dominant dynasty. Where Steph Curry, instead of revolutionizing basketball in the tech-rich Bay Area, ended up in Minnesota, playing for a franchise that hadn't tasted relevance since Garnett left town. Would Curry have become the same all-time great player he is today? Or would early injuries and franchise dysfunction have held him back? What if, in this alternate universe, then team president and GM David Kahn made the right call? What if he drafted Curry at number 6, pairing him with a young Kevin Love, and the two became the most lethal offensive duo of their generation? One splash, 1,000 ripple effects. How does this reshape the NBA as we know it? This is what could have been if the Timberwolves drafted Steph Curry in 2009. Following the 2009 NBA Draft, Steph Curry arrives in Minnesota, a franchise desperate for a turnaround. On paper, a Curry-Kevin Love duo has promise. Love's rebounding and inside-out scoring paired with Curry's shooting and playmaking could form the foundation of a competitive team. By 2011, instead of scraping the bottom of the standings, the Wolves could be fighting for a playoff spot. But in reality, even in an alternate one, things rarely go smoothly for young players drafted by poorly run franchises. Minnesota, under head coach Kurt Rambis, runs the triangle offense, the same system that worked for Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Dominant wings who could operate in the mid to high post. For a 6'2" sharpshooting point guard like Curry, the triangle is way less ideal. Unlike Golden State, where Steph had free reign to fire threes and run a high-tempo offense, Minnesota forces him into their rigid system that doesn't play to his strengths. Instead of letting Steph be Steph, the Wolves try to fit him into their system rather than creating a system around him. And then, just like in our timeline, injuries start to take their toll. Curry's ankle problems were nearly his undoing in our real timeline. The Warriors almost traded him to Milwaukee for Andrew Bogut, but the deal collapsed because even the Bucks thought his ankles were too much of a risk. Now imagine those same fragile ankles, except instead of being treated by Golden State's cutting-edge medical staff, they're in the hands of the Timberwolves medical department. The same group that once cleared Brandon Roy to play on knees that were essentially dust and good intentions. Without the patient, forward-thinking rehab program the Warriors provided, Curry's early career becomes a depressing cycle of promise, injury, setback, and repeat. His development stalls as Minnesota's notoriously impatient ownership grows frustrated with their injury-prone lottery pick. There's a very real chance Curry never reaches his full potential in Minnesota, or at all. Here's where it starts to get weird. In our timeline, the Timberwolves selected Ricky Rubio at number 5 in 2009, banking on the Spanish guard as their point guard of the future. But Rubio stayed in Spain until 2011. With Curry already in Minnesota, does Rubio still come over to join the team? If Curry's ankles fail him or he suffocates in an ill-fitting system, the Wolves might still bring Rubio over as their point guard savior, creating a potentially awkward backcourt pairing. But if Curry so much as flashes his potential, Minnesota might rethink its entire approach. By 2011, with Curry as the face of the team, the T-Wolves wouldn't be terrible, but they might not be out of the draft lottery either. Picking in the 10 to 14 range, they could target a two-way wing or defensive anchor. As fate would have it, players like Kawhi Leonard and Klay Thompson were available right around that spot.
Klay Thompson, a good look, and he was already running back.
But offensively, they're one of the best in the league, and they really take care of the ball.
Klay Thompson missing there, but Draymond the rebound. Klay on a reload three and drops it in. So Klay's hit 2 threes already. Klay Thompson and Capella met Kuminga up top. Nice defense. And Klay, they trade 3 for 2.
A Curry-Kawhi duo? A Curry-Klay pairing, where the Splash Brothers is now a reference to lakes instead of the Pacific Ocean. By 2014, if health and fit are on Minnesota's side, Curry emerges as a star. But one looming question remains. Does Kevin Love stay? And that's where things really get interesting. In our timeline, Kevin Love forced his way out of Minnesota in 2014, fed up with carrying a franchise that seemed allergic to winning. He was eventually traded to Cleveland, forming a big three with LeBron and Kyrie that ultimately delivered the Cavaliers their first championship. But in this alternate timeline, with a prime Steph Curry as a running mate, things could have looked very different. By 2012, Kevin Love had evolved into one of the league's most dominant big men, averaging 26 points and 13 rebounds per game. Pairing him with Curry's perimeter shooting would have created one of the NBA's most lethal inside-out duos. If everything clicked, the Wolves could have pushed for a playoff spot, altering the trajectory of their franchise. But history, even this fictional one, is rarely kind to the Timberwolves. If Curry's early injury struggles persisted or the franchise failed to build a proper supporting cast around him and Love, frustration would mount. In the real timeline, Love despised Minnesota's inability to build a contender. Even in this alternate world, if Curry and Love still aren't winning, Love could still want out. By the summer of 2013, Love could have his eye on an exit, forcing the Wolves into yet another rebuild. If that happens, does Curry stay patient and wait for the franchise to improve, or does he, like Love, start looking for his own escape route? The harsh truth? Even with Curry's talent, the Timberwolves' organizational dysfunction doesn't magically disappear. This is a franchise that has employed 7 different head coaches in the past 12 years. drafted 2 point guards back-to-back with top 6 picks, and once tried to convince people David Kahn was a basketball mastermind. Bad ownership leads to bad decisions. Even if Curry reached MVP levels, Minnesota's front office could still botch free agency signings, draft picks, and coaching hires. Would Flip Saunders still return in 2014 in an attempt to rescue the franchise? If so, would he build an offense maximizing Curry's talent, or would Minnesota continue its tradition of square peg, round hole basketball? And if Curry saw this dysfunction firsthand, how long before he pulled a Kevin Garnett and got himself traded? Garnett spent 12 years in Minnesota before finally escaping to Boston and winning a championship immediately. 12 years of loyalty, playoff letdowns, and what felt like a wasted prime. Does Curry follow the same path of loyalty? Or does he demand a trade for the betterment of his career? And if he does, where does he go? The Lakers? The Celtics? The Knicks? Oh, let's be honest, probably not the Knicks. Curry's presence in Minnesota creates a domino effect that completely reshapes the NBA draft landscape for years to come. If Curry makes the Wolves even moderately successful, they never bottom out in 2014 and 2015. That means no worst record, no lottery luck, and Karl Anthony Towns at number 1. So where does Cat land instead? Does he become a Laker, forming a dominant front court with Anthony Davis years later? Does he go to Philadelphia, creating an unholy logjam of centers that makes the Embiid-Okafor situation of the time look manageable by comparison? And without Cat, what direction does Minnesota take in the years to come? Maybe they never get Andrew Wiggins. In reality, the Wolves landed Wiggins by trading Love to Cleveland.
With the first pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Andrew Wiggins from Toronto.
But if Love never leaves, that trade never happens. And if Wiggins never becomes a Wolf, the 2017 Jimmy Butler trade never materializes. Butler never brings his infamous practice intensity to Minneapolis. The "you need me" practice never happens, which means basketball fans everywhere miss out on that all-time moment.
To practice for the first time with the Wolves, and I'm just gonna, that you told GM Scott Layton, quote, "You effing need me."
I was honest. Was I brutally honest? Yes. But I think that's the problem. Everybody's so scared to be honest with one another.
Where does Butler land instead? Does Philadelphia still get him? Does he team up with another star elsewhere? The entire competitive balance of the Eastern Conference shifts. Even further down the timeline, it likely means no Anthony Edwards in 2020.
One game here in the Twin Cities. Look at the moves by Edwards. Swashbuckling and slamming.
The Wolves got the number 1 pick in 2020 because they were still bad. But if Curry's Wolves were at least consistently competitive in the 2010s, how likely is it they would be in a position to draft Edwards at all? Does Ant end up on the Warriors, finally giving their franchise the young star they've been dreaming of? Does he land in Charlotte, giving LaMelo Ball a running mate that might actually make people watch a Hornets game willingly? Or does Detroit claim him, finally giving Pistons fans something to cheer about? Even with Curry, Minnesota's history suggests they may never become a true powerhouse. Unlike Golden State, which built an elite front office and player development system, the Wolves have rarely shown the same level of competence. Even with Curry's gravitational pull on the court, does Minnesota ever assemble the right pieces around him? Do they ever find their Klay Thompson, their Draymond Green, their Andre Iguodala? Or does Curry spend his prime carrying mediocre Minnesota teams to first-round exits? And if he eventually leaves, seeking championships elsewhere, does he still become the revolutionary force we know today? Or is he just another very good player who never quite reached his ceiling because of circumstances beyond his control? Drafting Curry could have changed everything for Minnesota, but the more likely scenario is that Minnesota would have changed everything about Curry's career, and likely not for the better. Maybe, just maybe, they become a stable franchise, or they remain the NBA's biggest what-could-have-been story. As the Timberwolves' hypothetical future with Curry plays out, the ripple effects across the league are undeniable. Meanwhile, over in Golden State, an entirely different reality is unfolding. one where Curry never steps foot in the Bay Area, forever altering the trajectory of their franchise and the NBA as we know it. June 25, 2009. The Golden State Warriors sit at number 7, ready to draft their franchise-changing superstar. They want Steph Curry. They need Steph Curry. And then Minnesota takes him at number 6. Just like that, their plans are thrown into disarray. In the real timeline, Curry became the face of the Warriors franchise, leading them to 4 championships and revolutionizing the game with his three-point shooting. But in this timeline, that never happens. No Curry means Monte Ellis remains the focal point of the Golden State's offense. Ellis is a lightning-fast scorer, capable of dropping 40 points on any given night. But as we saw in reality, he wasn't a system changer. Not a floor-spacing magician. Not an off-ball wizard, and not the foundational piece for a dynasty built to compete for championships. Without Curry, the Warriors are stuck in NBA purgatory. Too talented to tank, not good enough to contend. So what now? Do they use the 7th overall pick on another point guard? Maybe Brandon Jennings, a flashy high-upside playmaker once projected as the draft's top point guard? Or do they pivot completely, grabbing a young wing like DeMar DeRozan, hoping he can develop into their franchise cornerstone? And then comes 2011, the moment that in the real timeline helped shape the Warriors dynasty.
With the 11th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors select Klay Thompson from Washington State University.
Golden State selected Klay in large part because he was the perfect complement to Curry, a lethal off-ball shooter who thrived in a three-point heavy system. But in an alternative timeline, Thompson goes to the Warriors without Curry, and the Splash Brothers are never born. Without Curry's gravity pulling defenders to half court, does Golden State still see Klay as the right fit? Or do they pass on Thompson for someone like Kawhi Leonard or Kemba Walker, players who fit better in a more traditional offense? A huge piece of Golden State's dynasty was the rise of Draymond Green, a second-round pick who became their defensive anchor and a cornerstone of small ball basketball. But his development was tied directly to playing with Curry. Without Golden State's floor spacing revolution, does Draymond ever find his niche, or does he remain just another undersized forward, struggling to find minutes in a league still dominated by traditional big men? Further than that, does he even get drafted by Golden State at all? And if not, is he as effective playing in a different system for another team? The Curry butterfly effect extends beyond just the roster. It completely alters the Warriors' coaching trajectory. Does Mark Jackson still get hired in 2011? His player development approach helped transform Curry from an injury-prone question mark into a budding star. But if the team was still built around an aging vet in Ellis, perhaps Golden State hires a coach with a completely different philosophy. If the Warriors never become a contender, does Steve Kerr ever take the job in 2014? Kerr was drawn to Golden State in part because of Curry, seeing the potential to implement an elite, movement-heavy offense. Without a player as unique as Curry, does he pass on the Warriors entirely? Without the shift to pace and space basketball, the Warriors remain what they'd been for decades. A fun team, but not contenders. In our reality, 2014-15 was the year everything changed. The Warriors became an unstoppable force, winning 67 games, revolutionizing offense, and capturing their first championship in 40 years. Curry won his first MVP, dazzling the league with his range, speed, and handles. It was the birth of a dynasty. But in this alternative timeline, without Curry, Golden State never becomes Golden State. No generational shooter to build around. No pace and space revolution. No three-point barrage that crushed teams before halftime. Instead, the Warriors remain just another Western Conference team, stuck in the middle of the pack. Good, but never great. And Klay Thompson? Oh, without Curry's gravity pulling defenses away, he isn't the same player. Maybe the Warriors never see him as a future star. Maybe the Warriors grow impatient with his development and package him for a more conventional star in a desperate bid to remain relevant. The Warriors dynasty was built on one draft pick that Minnesota fumbled. In this timeline, that dynasty doesn't exist. For 6 years, the Golden State Warriors dominated the NBA. 3 titles, 5 straight finals, the three-point revolution. But in this alternate reality, no Warriors dynasty means the entire league's power structure changes. In reality, LeBron James lost 3 NBA finals to the Warriors in 2015, 2017, and 2018, a team that became his greatest obstacle the second half of his career. Without Golden State standing in his way, does LeBron completely dominate the decade? Let's start with 2015. With no Warriors to face, LeBron's Cavaliers would battle who exactly? The Spurs? The Rockets? The Thunder? Whoever emerges from the West, they're facing a motivated LeBron desperate to bring Cleveland its first championship. Without Curry's revolutionary offense exposing the Cavaliers' defensive weaknesses, does LeBron secure a title in his very first year back home? Then 2017 and 2018. No Warriors super team means no Kevin Durant in Golden State. So instead of losing back-to-back finals to perhaps the greatest collection of talent ever assembled, does LeBron add another ring or two to his collection? Does his GOAT case suddenly become undeniable? A huge part of Kyrie's decision to leave Cleveland in 2017 was the looming dominance of Golden State. If the finals weren't an uphill battle every year, does Kyrie stay alongside LeBron, creating a long-term Cavs dynasty? With no Warriors standing in his way, LeBron's championship count and his entire legacy could look dramatically different. Maybe 5 rings, maybe 6, maybe more. Without the Warriors controlling the West like a basketball monopoly, who becomes the team of the decade? The 2018 Rockets came within one Chris Paul hamstring of dethroning the Warriors in real life. They pushed the greatest team ever assembled to 7 games, missing 27 straight three-pointers in a Game 7 collapse that will haunt Houston fans forever. But without Golden State standing in their way, James Harden finally gets his moment. If CP3 stays healthy in 2018, the Rockets likely win it all anyway. Without a Warriors super team, does Harden capture at least one championship? Does coach Mike D'Antoni finally silence his playoff critics? Most importantly, without the Warriors to obsess over beating, do the Rockets ever go all in on the Pocket Rockets lineup that eventually led to their downfall? Or does Houston become the team of the decade, with Harden more widely appreciated as the offensive genius he was? In reality, the Warriors' dominance played a major role in breaking up the Spurs dynasty. In 2017, San Antonio was dominating Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, until Zaza Pachulia's controversial closeout injured Kawhi Leonard. Without the Warriors in power, does Kawhi stay in San Antonio, leading the Spurs to more titles alongside Greg Popovich? If so, Kawhi to Toronto never happens, and another champion from our timeline never materializes. If the Spurs remain elite through the late 2010s, they never get bad enough to land Victor Wembanyama in 2023. Where does he eventually end up being drafted? Without the Warriors, Kawhi's entire career arc might change, and so does the future of the Spurs. The Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan Clippers had all the talent to win a title, but they could never get past Golden State. Without the Warriors, do the Clippers finally reach an NBA Finals? Does Chris Paul finally cement his legacy as a champion? Without years of playoff heartbreak, does Blake Griffin stay in LA, avoiding the trade to Detroit? Without the Warriors setting an impossible standard, the Clippers could have been the team of the decade, turning Lob City from a fun nickname into a championship brand. But let's get back to the biggest ripple effect of them all, Kevin Durant. July 4th, 2016. Kevin Durant announces he's joining the 73-9 Warriors, a team that had just set the NBA regular season win record and came within 1 game and a Draymond Green suspension of back-to-back championships. Without Curry, that Warriors team doesn't exist. The 73-9 season never happens and the dynasty never forms. So where does KD go? Given what we've seen from him in today's timeline, we can safely guess he's not staying in OKC forever. Maybe after years of failing to dethrone him, he joins LeBron in Cleveland. Maybe he heads to LA following Kobe's retirement to become the next Lakers superstar. But one thing's certain, he's going somewhere, and the entire NBA is reshaped because of it. The 2020s ushered in a new era of NBA superstars, but without Stephen Curry's impact on the game, the league itself might look drastically different. From the rise of analytics-driven basketball to free agency dynamics, Curry's presence, or absence, continues to reshape the modern NBA in ways that extend beyond just Minnesota and Golden State. In real life, the Timberwolves have never been a top free agent destination. Even with Kevin Garnett in the early 2000s, Minnesota struggled to attract marquee talent. But does that change with Curry? If he elevates the Wolves into a perennial contender, maybe big-name free agents start taking them seriously. Maybe if Kevin Love stays, they land a real third star. Paul George, Jimmy Butler. Maybe they don't have to trade for Butler in 2017 because he chooses to sign there. But let's be honest. The Warriors built a strong culture around Curry because they had the right front office. If Curry is in Minnesota instead, do the Wolves suddenly figure out how to run a functional franchise? Or do they still fumble every big opportunity like they had so many times before? History suggests the latter. Even with Curry, the cold weather, small market, and ownership instability could still keep Minnesota from becoming a true destination. And if they fail to build a real contender around him, well, we've seen this movie before. Curry gets frustrated and eventually leaves, just like Love and Garnett did. Without Curry, Golden State is never the same. No Splash Brothers, no dynasty, no championships, no Chase Center. The Warriors went from a team worth $450 million in 2010 to now a $7 billion franchise, the most valuable in the sport, largely because of Curry's brilliance. Without him, do they still build their San Francisco Palace, or do they remain stuck in an outdated Oracle arena? Do the Warriors ever become contenders at all? Without Curry, Klay Thompson might never wear the blue and gold. Draymond Green might remain just another second-round pick nobody remembers, and the team might have continued their 40-year tradition of disappointment. Instead of 4 championships in 8 years, do the Warriors spend a decade perpetually rebuilding? More than just championships, Curry changed how basketball is played. His deep shooting range forced defenses to evolve, led teams to prioritize floor spacing, and changed how offenses operate at every level of the game. But if Curry never becomes a superstar in Minnesota, does the game evolve the same way? Do teams still attempt as many threes? The Warriors' success pushed the entire NBA toward three-point heavy offenses. Without them, do teams still take that leap, or does the game remain more balanced between inside and outside scoring? Do analytics-driven teams still take over? The rise of efficiency-based shot selection was fueled by Curry's playstyle. Without him proving its championship-level impact, do front offices still buy in? Remember when Charles Barkley and others insisted jump-shooting teams can't win it all?
Shooting teams. And the one year you guys have a terrific season, you think y'all took it personally. The teams aren't going small. They just need quality big men. What the Golden State Warriors did was terrific. But I don't think you're going to see a bunch of, well, if you can get guards like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, you got a better chance of playing small ball. But I don't think the NBA all of a sudden is going to have a bunch of three-point shooters and playing a bunch of small lines.
What if that belief never changed? Does an all-star player like Trae Young become the player he is today? Today's young guards model their games after Curry, but without that influence, does Trae still get the same freedom to play the way he does? Without Curry, the NBA's offensive evolution probably still trends toward more spacing and outside shooting, but would it happen as fast, and would it be as extreme? Curry's impact extends far beyond just his era. He influenced the next wave of NBA hoopers. Luka Doncic. His game features elements of Curry's deep shooting range and ball dominance. But without Curry showing that one player can bend entire defenses with the threat of shooting, do teams still embrace a player like Luka as the face of their franchise? Ja Morant. Does the NBA still emphasize scoring point guards as much, or do traditional pass-first guards remain the standard? Anthony Edwards. despite his unreal athleticism and ability to attack the rim, and is currently leading the NBA in three-pointers for the 2024-25 season. That's a direct result of the Curry effect on basketball, where it is now expected that your franchise player be a proficient three-point shooter. The Warriors dynasty didn't just change their franchise forever. It rewrote the NBA's entire landscape. Without them, the league may look drastically different today. No dynasty in Golden State, no super team in the Bay. A completely different reality of NBA champions, contenders, and legacies. Steph going to Minnesota means the Warriors never become a dynasty, the Wolves might have had a shot at relevancy a lot sooner, and the careers of other Hall of Famers like LeBron, Harden, KD, CP3, and countless others all look a lot different. The possibilities are endless. So, what if the Timberwolves had drafted Steph Curry? We'll never know, but one thing is certain, the NBA would be entirely different than it is today. If you enjoyed diving into this alternative NBA timeline, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and check out this next video from our What If series. Drop your thoughts in the comments. As always, we want to hear them.